So Barry, I'm going to let you change that screen.
Need to be co-host to do that.
Hold on a second. Because I don't see those three buttons. Good evening, everyone. And welcome to the Buddhist Path of Awakening course. Let's all bow in. So I'm John Baker, and I'm the speaker for this evening. We have been working our way through the profound treasury of the ocean of Dharma, which is a three-volume set. We're on the second volume, the volume dealing with the middle path, the Mahayana. These volumes are digests of talks that Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche gave over the course of 15 years at a program called the Vajrayana Seminary. Every year, he would take 150 to 250 students off for 3 months of practice and study. And they went to different locations. It was always in the fall. And the talks that he gave were divided into three divisions: the Hinayana, or lesser vehicle teachings, the Mahayana, or greater vehicle teachings, and the Vajrayana, or the adamantine or indestructible vehicle teachings. These talks have been digested into these three volumes and edited, and we are working our way through them. We are approaching the end, actually, of the second volume, the Mahayana, and I think that in a couple of weeks we are going to enter the third volume, having to do with the Vajrayana. So if you want to purchase that volume, please go ahead and be prepared. You can get it at Shambhala Publications. You can buy it on the internet at Amazon, and there are probably other places as well. So it's the Profound Treasury of the Ocean of Dharma, Volume 3, which I forget the title of it, but it has to do with the Vajrayana. Tonight we are on chapter 44 and 45, and we're on chapter 44 of the Profound Treasury. There is a chapter 43, which was assigned, and I'm just going to let you read it and contemplate it yourselves. I think what I want to focus on tonight is chapter 44, which is really beginning to get into the structure of the Mahayana path. And it starts out by discussing the 10 bhumis. These are the 10 stages of the Mahayana path, the path of the Bodhisattva. The Bodhisattva literally means Bodhi is awake, Sattva is being. It's the person who is awakening, the Bodhisattva, and has taken a vow to dedicate their lives to the benefit of all other sentient beings, and is also awakening to the truth of reality. This path is described variously. The main division, which we're actually going to start getting into next week, is the 10 bhumis, the 10 stages. But he just starts this chapter by introducing these stages, that they're called bhumis in Sanskrit, sa in Tibetan, both of which mean level, earth, or ground. And there are 10 of these stages, and each of them, he says, you are loosening up and getting more inspired because there is less bondage, less samsaric confusion or aggression, and there is much more awakening to the truth of what reality actually is beyond our dreams. And each bhumi, each stage, contains a paramita, which is a transcendent virtue. The paramitas are what you practice, and the bhumis are what you get out of that practice. The interesting thing that he says about these stages is that these stages, unlike the stages which went before in the Hinayana stage of the path, these are permanent. When you actually enter one of these bhumis, you stay there. The realization and the understanding that you achieve is not temporary. Now, this chapter is actually devoted to another scheme for describing the path that we're on, all of us, as Buddhists, those of us who consider ourselves Buddhists. And this is a different scheme, but it relates to the 10 bhumis. It's called the 5 paths. And these paths are the path of accumulation, the path of the path of unification, the path of vision or seeing, the path of meditation, and the path of no more learning. And the first 2 of these paths, the path of accumulation and the path of unification, are describing the Hinayana stage of the path, the beginner's stage. The path of seeing is the entrance into the Mahayana. And the path of meditation describes the bulk of the Mahayana, the bhumis, the stages 2 through 10. And finally, the last path, the path of no more learning, is actually enlightenment itself, and really the entrance into the Vajrayana. So to start with these paths, the first of them, the path of accumulation. This establishes the practitioner, the would-be or actual bodhisattva, enlightened being, this practitioner, the person who would be enlightened, on the path towards enlightenment. And the background of this path is egolessness, the understanding of egolessness, the growing understanding, and compassion. Both of these have to do with the evolution in this practitioner as they practice more and study more of discipline, Samadhi, which means meditative absorption, and Prajna, which is ultimate clear seeing beyond the myth of I and other, seeing the world as it truly is. This path is divided into 3 stages, this first path: the lesser, medium, and greater. The lesser path, they say, is like the earth, that you're settling down. You're coming down into awareness of this world. You're giving up dreams slowly or rapidly. It's you're up to you. Your attitude is very respectful. You would like to enter this path. You begin to experience the sacredness of your world. You have respect for reality and do not confuse things. So what this means is that as we cut through the veil of conceptual overlay that we typically lay on the world, we begin to experience this world as it truly is, beyond our labels of good and bad, hope and fear, wishing things were otherwise. We begin to see it as it actually is. And this is what is meant by when we begin to see the world as sacred, as sacredness. Until then, until we begin to accomplish this, we see the world in terms of what it can do for or to me. And that's not at all sacred. It has to do with seeing the world in sort of utilitarian, egotistical terms. Seeing the world, the sacredness of the world, is seeing the world as it truly is in its own right. And then we begin to see the world as truly luminous, glowing, beautiful, empty of the conceptual overlays. And when we strip it of those conceptual overlays, it begins to glow with a kind of brilliance and beauty. This is what it means to see the world as sacred. You have respect for reality, and you do not confuse things. Are you coming up? And he says, you are like the earth, which is very solid and sits through the 4 seasons. You are not upset by changes, because we're beginning to cut through these neuroses these constant wishing that things were otherwise, trying to see things in terms of what they can do for or to me, which is a terrible burden. This is the essence of samsara. And in cutting through it, we begin to contact the world as it truly is, and as it truly is, it's worth being here for no reason at all. It's just simply fundamentally of value. In the Shambhala teachings, this is called basic goodness. In the Vajrayana teachings, it's called sacredness, that the world is fundamentally sacred, fundamentally of value. And we begin to experience this at the beginning of the path of accumulation, the very beginning of the path altogether. Because we begin, one way or another, through our practice of meditation, to come present, to come out of the dreams. The medium path of accumulation is the intention, is like gold. You're a decent person, a good citizen of the Bodhi path. Why? Because you're beginning to cut through ego, the egotistical concerns. Ego only takes place in thought, thoughts about I and other. And as we begin to come present over and over again through our meditation practice, giving up those thoughts, then we begin to become decent people, good people, not people who are self-aggrandizing, self-serving. He says, we remain solid in our practice. And your intention to attain enlightenment is never, ever changing. You have this strong desire. You can almost sense it. You're beginning to get the idea of what enlightenment actually is, that it's waking up from the dreams of I and other, which have tormented us, really. The greater path of accumulation is called wholesomeness, like the full moon. Your intentions are clear, your attitude is good, and you begin to develop generosity, true generosity, discipline, and all the rest of the paramitas, these transcendent virtues, but on a small scale, because you're still at the very beginning of the path. This wholesomeness is like the full moon, because you accumulate and expand various teachings. This path, the path of accumulation, is what we're doing on this path is we're hearing the teachings, we're becoming familiar with them, they are beginning to make sense to us, we are beginning to incorporate them into our being, and we incorporate them in through the three practices of study, meditation, and contemplation. And more we are becoming steeped in these teachings. They are beginning to permeate our being. And not only that, but we're beginning to become actually genuinely inspired by them. This is a quality of this first path of accumulation. They are beginning to make tremendous sense to us more and more. And as they make sense, we find them in our experience and we subscribe to them. We are increasingly giving them our loyalty. This is the very beginning stage of the path. This is the first of the 5 paths. And so it has a lot to do with intention. The intention to devote oneself to the Dharma, to understand it, to become it, and to free oneself from the sorrow, from the pain of neurosis, of believing in ego, of I and other, and all that entails. We've done it for many, many lives, and we're beginning now to develop the intention to free ourselves from this. The second path, which is the path of unification, you're now actually beginning to connect with these teachings. You're beginning to find them in your experience, in your very being. He says, here your willingness to practice these teachings, to understand them, and to be a meditator and all of that is like a burning fire. You're looking forward to the possibility of entering the Mahayana, which means you're looking forward to the possibility of achieving genuine awakening, insight. You see that the obstacles to the path of Dharma can be burnt, and you regard them as fuel rather than as obstacles and barricades. So when you see an obstacle, you regard it as an opportunity, as a way of something to be overcome so that you can enter further into the path. Meditation at this stage of the path is called Nampar Mitokpa in Tibetan, which means complete non-conceptualization. We experience this in moments in the beginning, and then more and more as we go through the path, we begin to recognize that our awareness of this world is fundamentally non-conceptual. Our awareness of the quality of the day, of the objects, of the sounds, of the smells, tastes, all of the data which arises now can be seen without concept, without thought. That the thoughts which explain it, which categorize it, which judge it as good and bad are unnecessary. And they begin to evaporate. And we begin to see this world completely non-conceptually. Nampar Mitokpa. This is only the second path. It is the final realization of the desolateness of the meditative state. Desolate, why? Because it offers no promise. It's just everything is absolutely what it is. It's based on shamatha vipassana practice, which we're all doing, and you begin to enter the shunyata experience and realization. This is the beginning of it, the hint of it. And there are 4 stages to this path of unification and this entry into shunyata. The first is called heat, trowa in Tibetan. And what's beginning to happen is you're beginning to get a hint of emptiness. Emptiness means that we're beginning to cut through the belief in I and other, and of the relationships that inform those 2 beliefs of I and other, these very nasty relationships. When you have I and other, then you always see the other as either for you, against you, or indifferent to you. And if it's for you, you want to woo it, you want to draw it in. And if it's against you, you want to expel it, which is aggression. And if it's indifferent to you, if it has no for or against, then you just ignore it. And all 3 of these activities are painful. And with shunyata, we are beginning to give them up, to cut through them, and to see the world as it truly is, instead of being in this I-other story. As soon as we have I and other, we're engaged in some kind of a drama, just like a television drama. And that drama is fraught with tension, unhappiness, the desire for happiness. And even when there's happiness in that drama, it's tinged with the knowledge that that happiness will not last, impermanent. So at this stage of the path, we're beginning to get a hint of emptiness, which is to cut through these false, illusory fictions and to see the world as it truly is. And when we do that, the whole purpose of the thrust of shunyata is twofold. On the one hand, it's freedom from these illusory stories that we tell, which are so painful, always having to do with the fear about me, I and other. And at the same time, the world as it lives now in the present moment is revealed increasingly as being beautiful, brilliant. It's not really beautiful so much as it's vivid. The term in the teachings they use for it is luminous, that this world glows. And that's part of this heat, the heat of Mahayana, which is the first of the 4 stages on the path of unification. The second stage is called crest, semo, and you're developing a terrifying sharpness and conviction, he says, that you feel a sharpness inside you. There's the possibility of for the first time, of transcending this gross, human, as it were, confusion and sorrow and suffering, and becoming, he says here, superhuman. By relating and living with insight. And then the quality of heat, feeling the beauty of this world and of the phenomenal world as it arises free from our preconceptions, and of crest, which is the beginning that you're beginning to realize that you could emerge as a very different kind of being. This produces the 3rd stage. Well, before we get to that, there are 5 qualities in crest, this conviction that you are becoming a bodhisattva. The first is faith in your discovery. You're developing increasing faith, belief in this, as it were. It's not really belief, it's just conviction. The second is energy. You're not tired, but you're highly energized and interested. The third perception has to do with mindfulness, Trengpa, that the very essence of this stage of the path is that you're coming back again and again out of dream into this simple awareness of here in this present moment. The fourth is Samadhi, meaning that the awareness that you're developing of this present moment is becoming more and more ongoing. That's what Samadhi means. It's absorption in simple awareness, relaxation into awareness in this present moment. And the fifth perception is Prajna, knowledge, which is that you can see the world as it truly is, stripped of the veils of judgment, stripped of the stories of I and other, and the relationships that inhere in those stories. And your prajna, your knowledge, is increasingly sharp. That is, the world is revealed very, very clearly. So prajna has these two aspects of cutting through belief in I and cutting through belief in other, and in doing that, revealing the world as being very, very beautiful, luminous, and vivid. These are the five these are called the five perceptions. And then there are the five powers, which are simply that these five perceptions, you don't have to cultivate them. The more you practice, the more you understand the logic of these teachings, they just come. They need not be sought. The third quality of this path, the path of unification, is patience. Now the teachings are becoming increasingly part of your system. You don't have to do anything really. You have increasing patience, which means that you're beginning to develop the confidence that this is happening naturally because you're practicing, because you're studying, and you don't have to actually force it at all. You've identified with the teachings completely, he says, increasingly. You feel you have a right to expound the teachings, to even begin to teach them. And you develop the mental power to remember and memorize these teachings, the words you read or hear. He says, forgetfulness is based on trying to preserve things for yourself. In contrast, an egoless approach toward sentient beings brings a tremendously sharp memory and powerful recollection. The fourth aspect of this stage is what's called higher Dharma. And that means that you feel that you're actually becoming part of this lineage. You're awakening into it. You develop the conviction and the powerful mental recollection. And you begin to feel that you are a holder of the Dharma, a lineage holder, because you're actually experiencing what these teachings are saying. On the path of unification, this is still only the second path. You realize that your mind and body can be synchronized, independent of the conflicting emotions, jealousy, pride, hatred, hunger, anger. Independently of that, your mind and body can be synchronized. What does that mean? That means that your awareness is right here with your body. The two are in union. There is no separation. And so when you begin to synchronize your awareness and your body, the physicality, the body is not just this body, it's also the very physicality of the world. And your awareness and this physicality become one. It's not like I'm being aware of this computer screen, it's just happening. There's the computer screen, there's this table, there's the sensation of your bottom on the cushion. All of these things are in awareness, naturally, simply. Mind and body are becoming synchronized. And then when you begin to do that, you begin to burn up the kleshas, the defilements, these emotional travesties of anger, pride, jealousy, passion, hunger. They begin to be burned up because every time we come present, they evaporate. They are burned. This is all on the path of unification, still just the second path. And this joining of intention and action is the taking of the Bodhisattva vow, by which you vow to awaken and to be of service to other sentient beings. It's not some goody-goody intention, like I'm going to be a nice guy and I'm going to be a nice person and I'm going to help other people. It's simply that there's nothing left to do except be of service, of awakening to everybody else. That's all that there is. And that's what the Bodhisattva vow that many of you have taken is truly about. It's about the vow to awaken into a state of mind, a state of being in which you are automatically, naturally, inexorably interacting with other sentient beings, other beings, humans, animals, if you've got the capacity with hell beings, hungry ghosts and gods, in a way that helps them to come present, is of benefit to them. Because you are being truly awake. He says, the path of unification, the second path, links the past or the path of accumulation with the future or the path of seeing, and we're going to get to that. So this path, what's beginning to happen is that in the beginning stage of the path, you were studying, you were practicing, you were having an intention. At the path stage of the path of unification, you're actually beginning to embody the teachings. They are beginning to take you over. You're beginning to become what they describe in truth. The path of seeing is the third path. And this is the actual entrance into the Mahayana. It's the first bhumi, the first of the 10 stages. And what it is a true awakening to shunyata, an awakening to insight. It may only happen for a moment, but it actually happens. And once that happens, you can't go back. This is this stage, this first bhumi is called, each bhumi has a name. And this bhumi is called pramudita, which means great joy. And it's this experience of awakening into reality. It's the entrance into the Mahayana. And once one begins to see this, which is the third path, the path of vision, the path of seeing, then the very nature of the path changes. Up until this point, you were studying the teachings, you were practicing meditation, and of course you continue that, but you were hoping to understand more. Now you understand what the heart of this path is, once you have entered the path of seeing. And so the path now becomes a constant coming back to this. You lose your mind, as it were, you fall off into dream, and then you realize you're dreaming, and you come back to this clear, open awareness of emptiness, which is the path of seeing, the third path. So the path, this is the fourth path now. See, once you see what happens in the third path, the path of seeing, then the fourth path, which is the path of meditation, is no longer a mental exercise. It's simply to remember and come back to what you saw in the third path again and again and again, because you're coming back to reality, to sanity. So the path of meditation is a constant coming back. And you're evolving through this coming back deeper and deeper as the veils of ego become thinner and thinner and fall away, because you are in contact now with the true world, the real world, the world of shunyata. And you're doing this fourth path, through the path of meditation, you progress through the bhumis 2 through 10, until you reach the fifth path, the path of no more learning. And this is actually the attainment of enlightenment itself. The fifth path. Now, there are two ways to understand this fifth path, the path of enlightenment. This is the Vajrayana, and it's the entrance into the Vajrayana. And there are two ways to understand the Vajrayana. The first is that we can do the practices of the Vajrayana in the style of the fourth path. That is, that the practices of the Vajrayana become practices of coming back again and again to a description of reality as it is. The other aspect of the Vajrayana is that we have become fully enlightened at the 10th bhumi, at the end of the 10th bhumi. Sometimes it's called the 11th bhumi, the Vajra-like Samadhi. That means the indestructible absorption. And then the Vajrayana simply becomes a description of the evolution of the world as we see it through the eyes of an enlightened being. The world changes. It changes gradually or rapidly. It depends on the individual. And the different stages of the Vajrayana, which we'll be getting into, are descriptions of this world of enlightenment as it's seen through the eyes of enlightenment and as it evolves. We're getting into some very beautiful stuff. So this path of no more learning, the attainment of enlightenment, still there's further to go through the different stages of the Vajrayana, until finally the last stage is the true stage which Trungpa Rinpoche, he called, it's beyond any stage at the very end. He called it old dog. Finally, you get to the very end of the path and you're like an old dog lying in the dirt, swatting the flies with its tail. But before that, we've got a heck of a journey through the Vajrayana. It's described in different ways. The Kagyus describe it in 4 major divisions. The Nyingma sect describes it in 6, and we'll be seeing it in 6 because Trungpa Rinpoche's teacher, Jamgon Kongtrul of Shechen, was Nyingma. And so Trungpa Rinpoche received both teachings, and he preferred to teach the Nyingma scheme, which is in six sub-yanas: the Kriya Yana, Upayana, Yoga Yana, Mahayoga, Anuyana Yana, and the Ati Yana, or Dzogchen, Great Perfection. And we'll be going through at least some of these as we get into the 3rd volume. So to summarize the 5 paths, next week we're going to start in on the 10 bhumis, and we're going to spend 2 classes at least discussing the different ones of the 10 bhumis, because they're gorgeous, they're beautiful, and the logic will be very helpful for you. So we have the first path, which is the path of accumulation. Here we're accumulating what we need in order to tread the path. You might say we're accumulating the good karma that we need in order to tread the path. And we do this by studying the teachings and by practicing shamatha and vipassana. And then the second path, the path of unification, is we're actually beginning to realize, these teachings now, having familiarized ourselves with them, having studied the 4 Noble Truths, the 3 marks of existence, the stages of the path, whatever it might be, the teachings of the 5 skandhas, the 12 nidanas, all of that, and begun to understand the logic of it, then it begins to become a part of us. And we begin to actually taste it and feel it. And we feel the heat of it, the inspiration of it. And then in the 3rd path, the path of vision, we actually awaken. We awaken and see have a vision, a true vision of the world as it is. And this is the entrance into the Mahayana, the first bhumi. And then in the fourth path, we practice coming back to that vision of the third path over and over and over again. What it simply means is coming back to this, here and now, awakening to this, coming back out of dream to this again and again, and deepening through our repeated contact with this, or our repeated immersion in this. We deepen our understanding of it, and we progress through the 10 bhumis of the Mahayana path as it becomes deeper and more a part of our being, and as the confusions become thinner and thinner and happen less and less. And that's the fourth path, until finally the achievement of enlightenment itself, which you might think is the end, and yet it's not. Because even after that, there's a further unwinding, evolving effortlessly into different stages. And many teachers that we'll listen to or read about progress through different stages of the path, of this Vajrayana path. So for instance, those of you who are familiar with Tilopa and Naropa, these were enlightened beings. And Tilopa was very much a siddha, which is an individual that's a power holder. And this is a symptom or a way of expressing the early stages of the Vajrayana path, the early stages of enlightenment, that one is completely absorbed in power, the power of true seeing, of true action. I think I've said enough. This is really powerful stuff. The 5 paths are important. We're all of us on the first and second paths in varying degrees, and to some extent, entering into the third and fourth paths. So we could have a discussion.
John, thank you so much for your teaching. A question that I've had for a long time. In the readings, it comes up over and over, the expression, a direct realization of emptiness. And my question is that related, how is that related to true awakening, to shunyata, as you're describing it here tonight? Is it just the same thing, but a matter of degree?
It's the third path. It's the path of vision, that one has a sight, catches sight of it. It might just be a glimpse, it might be more. Each of us is different. But you begin to actually see it, experience it. And once that happens, then the idea of your practice is transformed. Your practice is no longer an ambition, it's a return to that clarity, that ease, that seeing. It's just a remembering of it, a coming back. And that's the path of meditation, the fourth path.
Okay, thank you very much.
Shamatha Vipassana is so valuable. Every time we go out with the breath, and it goes out, and Rinpoche says, you go out, it dissolves, gap. We use that word gap sometimes. That word gap has to do with that path of seeing. Letting go, just seeing this right here. You could do it right now. Here we are. Who else would like to say something?
Christy has her hand up.
Okay, Christy.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you. I just was reminded of something that I had heard a while back And it didn't make sense to me until I heard it again. And it was something from Pema Chodron's, I think it was her teaching on how to meditate, I think is what it was. And it said, when the Buddha was asked what it was like to be, or, you know, a realized being, he just simply said, in the hearing, there is just the hearing. And in the smelling, there is just the smelling. And in the tasting, there is just the tasting. And in the feeling, there is just the feeling, or, you know, it's that. And it just, that hit me hard the other day. And I just love your constant reminders to just like come back, you know, and just experience just what is here right in front of us. That just, to live in that space, just being present to that all the time, just the simplicity and the sharpness just struck me. I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, that's terrific. Thank you. And that when we do that, there's not a feeling of doubt, of self-doubt. Self-doubt is a big problem. Self-doubt keeps us from resting and acknowledging this. So it's just simple. Here you are. And here we are. We actually are. You know, this is us right now. We are here. And it's just an acknowledgement of that, a coming back to that, a letting go of ambition. Ambition is the flip side of self-doubt. When you doubt yourself, then you want to be better. And we let that whole Megillah go because it's just a dream. It's just a thought. And when you let that thought dissolve, here we are. Right now. All of us. This is the third path. So beautiful. The third path is really, it's the pivot.
And I have a question. Are there any examples of historical figures in Buddhism who have reached the path of no learning, who have not formally learned and studied the Dharma?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Read the stories of the 84 Siddhas. I mean, there's the guy, I mean, I love some of these stories. There's this guy who was, he went to sleep in the middle of a crossroads in a very busy city. If you can imagine this, you've ever been to a busy Indian city. And he slept for 20 years. And then he woke up and he was enlightened. It's just nonsensical stories like that. You know, there are a lot of them, the 84 Siddhas. I mean, Naropa, go figure. You know, he follows Tilopa for 12 years. And Tilopa, you know, just puts him through terrible agonies, right? He says, you're walking along, he says, gee, Tilopa says to himself, if I had a real student, he'd throw himself off this cliff for me. So Naropa says, okay, I better do that. Throws himself off the cliff. He's lying at the bottom. His bones are all broken. And Tilopa comes down and says, what's the matter with you? And Naropa says, oh, this fool of a self who believes in himself and having a body is in terrible pain. And Tilopa says, oh, just get up. And he snaps his fingers and it's all gone. And he has to follow him again. That goes on for 12 years, right? So, yeah, there are lots of crazy, the stories get more and more outrageous the more they become tantric, Vajrayana, because Vajrayana is all about transcendence of logic, of the ordinary logic. Logic is the province of ego. Although it can get you a long way. The Tibetans engaged in debate, a lot of debate, you know, in the monasteries. But thanks, it's a great question. Read those stories, the 84 Siddhas. Keith Dowman did a translation. I'm not wild about the translation, but Maybe there's some others too. There's the story of the guy who was so fat that, this is one of my favorites, that he couldn't get up, and finally his family got disgusted with him, and they had him carted out and left him in a charnel ground. You know, I'm telling this for everybody else. You know this story. A charnel ground is a place where people who are too poor to have the bodies of the dead cremated, they take them out and leave them in a charnel ground for animals to eat. And so his family left this guy in the charnel ground because he couldn't stand up and they were tired of feeding him. And there was a yogi. Yogis would go to these charnel grounds because they would want to meditate in the charnel ground, because death is a great inspiration. You know, if you see death all around you, you know, you think, oh boy, I better hurry up, you know, and practice. And so yogis would go out there and practice. And this yogi is practicing in the charnel ground. He sees this fat guy and he takes pity on him and gives him teachings. And the guy becomes enlightened. And people come and they bring him food. And he never does leave the charnel ground, never does get up. He's one of the 84 siddhas. The stories are more and more outrageous. Transcending logic, which is what this path is all about. Transcending the logic of ego, which is all about self-protection, self-aggrandizement, getting somewhere. Thanks for that. That's fun. Mark Eskenazi has his hand up.
I just want to make sure I was unmuted. Yeah, I was just, hi, thank you very much, by the way. This is great. The path of unification, it's all right. So it sounds like it's connecting our past, our Dharma messages and what we've learned. And we're combining that, and it's helping us. It also gives us, what do they refer to it as? Forward vision. Just wondering what exactly is that?
Well, in the path of accumulation, we've just started, and we're accumulating all the stuff we need, the teachings, you know, and the practices, learning how to meditate. The path of unification is we're actually beginning to experience it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's beginning to connect to our being, our deeper being, and we're beginning to become inspired. When we develop heat, that heat is the hint of emptiness. And what it is inspiration, that we feel that these teachings are actually making sense, that it could happen. You know, it could take us over. And that more and more it has less to do with me and my ambition and more to do with relaxing into it, but giving into it, becoming it.
The forward thinking aspect, but is that like some sort of, I mean, it sounds like it's connecting past and future. I mean, the past is being our doing all the learning, and the future, the forward thinking is, I don't know, it sounds a little different to me. I don't know. Am I just misinterpreting that, or?
Let's see.
It's the last page, the Path of Unification.
Yeah, he's talking about heat. You've had faith, energy, mindfulness, samadhi, and prajna, those five.
Okay.
Right? And these are just aspects of what is developing in you. As you become more and more in the teachings, you develop faith. That is, you begin to have confidence in this. You develop energy. You're inspired to practice. You're inspired to study and tread the path and share it with others. Mindfulness. You know, that I love that slogan from the Lojong teachings, that you begin and the end the day with the two things. And the two things are, you remember absolute bodhicitta and relative bodhicitta. And what absolute and relative bodhicitta means is you're coming back. And you begin and end the day by coming back. That's the third perception of mindfulness. The fourth is samadhi, that you begin to actually understand that awareness knows itself. It knows that it's aware. You don't have to be saying, am I aware? As soon as you do that, you've split. And there's two of you. But awareness is self-knowing. They call it, the term in Tibetan is rung rik. Rung means self, rik means knowing. True awareness, the awareness of this present moment, is self-known. You know, you can say, yeah, there's awareness, and that's just an acknowledgement. It's an unnecessary. It's like putting it into words, and that's okay. But if you try and grasp it, you know, like there's something to, then you've separated yourself truly.
I get it.
The fourth perception, samadhi, is really beginning to settle in. And it might only be for a moment, you know, or more moments that you begin to relax into this awareness in the present moment. And then the fifth perception, prajna, that's a big and important topic. That's beginning to understand what reality actually is, what the true world is, beyond our preconceptions. And all that's beginning to happen in the path of unification.
Thank you.
And we're all experiencing this. This is what we're doing. The people who are studying this and practicing this in greater and lesser degrees, we're going through these paths. The path of accumulation, the path of unification, and the last three paths. Thank you for that great question. Helps everybody. Amazing backdrop you've got behind you. Is that Ganesh?
Oh, just just hiding a hole in the wall. I'm just kidding.
Who else? You're probably going to end early tonight. This is going to be a shorter night. Complaints? There's so many people here with things they could say. It's funny, isn't it, how he gave such short shrift to the last three paths, the path of vision or seeing, path of meditation, and the path of no more learning. He really spent his time on the first two. But we're going to be getting into those paths as we get into the 10 bhumis. Next week is the first. Great joy.
Philip and Robert.
Well, I should let you go, Robert, because I already asked a question.
Okay, Robert.
Is that like age before beauty?
He's asking if it's age before beauty.
I'm trying to exercise patience.
Could one of these steps be described as a point of balance? And if so, which one?
I think increasingly we are giving up effort and relaxing into confidence of awareness. This rung-rik, this awareness that's with us all the time. We're giving up increasingly our doubts, our questions, and we are relaxing into doubtlessness. That's where the balance lies. It's really, what a relief to give up self-doubt, self-criticism, and to begin to develop the confidence that this path is actually happening for us. And all we have to do is put ourselves in position with sincerity, with genuineness, some kind of self-discipline, coming to meditation, regularly is great. Doing readings, coming to class, doing whatever you can do. That's
Yes.
what,
Self-doubt is
yeah.
that's a big. I just had a conversation with another teacher today about that very thing, about self-doubt, trusting oneself. You know, I think that it just occurs to me that if there were a comparable description in Buddhism to original sin in Christianity, it would be self-doubt.
You just repeated Trungpa Rinpoche.
Hmm.
That was almost a slogan. The Buddhist version of original sin is self-doubt. That's a quote, almost. Yeah.
Hmm. The splitness,
Yeah.
the splitness that occurs at that moment is a fall from grace.
Okay.
So John, you could sidestep this if you want, but I've been wondering a lot recently about awareness in this way. And my question is, where exactly does awareness exist?
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's this, you can't point to it.
Right. So I'm coming to understand it's not inside and it's not really outside.
It's everywhere. Inside, outside, all around. It's whatever you're aware of. And what you're aware of, like this eyeglass case, right, is one with the awareness. It's just a modulation of the awareness. It's just like the pixels on your computer screen, you know? It's like your computer screen. And it's constantly illuminating the awareness, the so-called six knowables, the six objects of perception: sights, sounds, smells, tastes, bodily sensations, and mental events of all kinds. And all they are is like pixels on this computer screen, like these words passing. They have no true existence, and yet they appear. They come to us. And the awareness is everywhere. It is, you might say, if you see, to say that it exists automatically puts limits on it. Like, where does it exist? Where does it begin and where does it end? It doesn't. It doesn't begin and end. It's everywhere. It permeates our being. So in some teachings, they refuse to even talk about awareness as part of reality. But in the Dzogchen teachings, they do. You know, they talk about Rigpa. Rigpa is Vidya in Sanskrit, Rigpa in Tibetan, and it means basically, call it awareness. It's often translated as seeing. Sometimes it's translated as pure knowing. Maybe pure knowing is a good one, because it's everywhere. It's in the window that I'm looking out of. It's in the sound of these words. It's what illuminates our lives.
And we are, each of us, part of that awareness, not in the sense of being the one who is aware, but in the sense of being part of what, it's hard to put it in words, just as a mountain or a tree is part of that awareness.
Yes, it is. Yes. Yes. And we're not individuals. We're just passing gestures, you know, in the awareness. You move your hand, it passes through the space. That's what we are. We're a passing gesture, constantly forming and dissolving instant by instant.
Thanks. That's a hard question to answer.
It's so beautiful. And the Dzogchen teachings go into this in great detail. The great perfection teachings, which I hope we'll get to as a group. They're really gorgeous. Who else? There was somebody besides you.
Judith also.
Judith.
Yeah, that's That's such an interesting question, Philip. I've been wondering about that myself. And what I seem to feel, although I wonder if that limits it, is that it has to do with your relation to the five knowables. Would that be a limiting way of looking at it? Awareness or not?
Awareness is happening
With
right
your
now.
relationship
Yeah.
to everything.
You don't have to make an effort to be aware. Effort
No.
only obscures it.
It's just the process of relating to everything. Awareness.
I'm not following the question, Judith.
Am I limiting what awareness is by thinking of it as the relation, the way one relates to whatever is happening, whoever is happening, whatever you're seeing, feeling?
I would say yes, you are limiting it, but it includes that. It's what illuminates everything. Awareness. It illuminates everything you can experience. It's as though everything were lit by light inside. The light of knowingness.
But that is your relation to it, right?
I don't know, because I'm not sure what you mean. I mean, right now, there are these hands, there are these words, they're all lit by knowingness. Inexorably. I mean, you can't stop it. It's happening continuously for all of us. You can ask questions, you can have doubts, and then there's this feeling of separation, and then that passes, but meanwhile, it just goes on, the state of knowing.
Thanks, John. Thanks so much for the teaching. It really adds so much depth to have
this state of knowingness that you're asking about. The word for it in Sanskrit is vidya. Okay? Tibetan it's rigpa. Trungpa Rinpoche was given a title by the 16th Karmapa, the head of the Kagyu sect. The title was Vidya Dara. That means the holder of Vidya. Dara means the one who holds. Vidya, this complete, utter knowingness. It's like an ultimate title.
Utter knowingness.
Vidyadhara. The Vidyadhara, Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche, or the Vidyadhara, it's often pronounced Vidyadhara. So we've got two more people with their hands raised.
Yeah, Ed and Lodro.
That's good. Lodro. Who was the, okay.
Thank you, John. I was wondering if you can share a few words about the relationship between the Kauyanamitra and the 10 Bhumis.
The what?
The Kauyanamitra, the spiritual friend, and the 10 Bhumis. The Kauyanamitra is the Mahayana teacher who has had some experience of the 10 Bhumis, or some of them, and can help the student, as it were, into them and to understand them. And it's a very important relationship. the Kauyanamitra is also the bringing the lineage of teachings to the student. And the student will become a Kauyanamitra as well, spiritual friend, to the extent that they develop true spiritual understanding. So it's very important. This path is all about the human connections of friendship, of love, and of this path. That's what the path is lit by. There's this terrific quote in the New York Times. Was it today or yesterday? Huh? Yeah. Was it today? Yes, yesterday. Yeah. A columnist was writing about something, and he ended with a quote from the Buddha, of all things. And Ananda, the Buddha's chief disciple, maybe, certainly his servant, his attendant, asks the Buddha, is the importance of the Sangha, part of this path? And the Buddha says, no, Ananda, it's not part of this path. It is the path, the Sangha. That's what Kauyanamitra is all about. It's all about this friendship on the pure spiritual path that is only increasing as we progress along it. Deep friendship, deep connection, less and less separation. Yeah. Thank you. It's a beautiful question.
Thank you.
Kauyanamitra. Mitra means friendship, and Kalyana means on the path. We have Mark again. Did you have your hand raised or?
No, Ed.
Oh, Ed.
I thank you, everyone, for this wonderful discussion, and especially John for your persistent teachings that really take us always to the next level. But it's not the past level. It's not the future level. It's just the level. In response to Judith's question about awareness, I always go back to the first reminder: we're human beings. We have precious human existence, and the six nobles are the ways, are the vehicles that human beings have to use. We don't have any alternative. That's the way that we're constructed, if you will. So I would say that through our human faculties, whether the six nobles, awareness occurs. Buddha nature manifests, whatever you want to call it, but it's in the exercise of our human faculties that it's through the exercise of our human faculties that we become enlightened.
Well said. Well said. And that we're becoming more and more human. Yeah.
Big thank you.
Thank you, Judith. You provoked it. That's really terrific. Yeah. Rinpoche emphasized that so much again and again. I remember him saying, it's not a matter of becoming superhuman. It's a matter of becoming, the Buddha was a completely ordinary human being. And then he looked at us, we were all early students, and then he said, you'll all make that into something extraordinary. So we got two people with their hands raised.
Hi, I guess it's me. I just, I was looking back on my notes. I'm still fascinated by the term, I don't know if I pronounce it right, but alaya, and that it's where we rest in the moment. That, you know, is one of our classes on that really the past, the future, and even the moment doesn't really exist, or it's always changing. And alaya is mentioned several times. I find it very interesting, the thought that, you know, when I'm resting in the moment, which, you know, I mean, I love my meditation and I feel it. And I wonder, is that also where we kind of lie, our concept of self-consciousness, which is actually perhaps an illusion, as much as we're maybe more of a community in alaya, we're all kind of in the mix. I don't know, that's kind of out there, but
Well, first of all, you know, there are two versions, there are two different contexts for the word alaya.
thank you.
One is the confused version. It's called the alaya consciousness, the alaya vijnana. Vijnana means consciousness in Sanskrit. And then there is the alaya itself, which is actually reality. There, it's just pure knowingness. And when we come back into this open state without self-doubt, or even if we have self-doubt, if we see the self-doubt, instead of being involved with it, like we're caught up in the story of it, that we actually see it. You can see a thought, you know, you can take a thought as an object of awareness, just like this glasses case. You know, you can make it an object of awareness. As soon as you do that, you can be resting in the true alaya, which is nothing but pure consciousness. So really, all we have to do is just come back to this consciousness that is here, always with us, giving up thoughts of self and other, and the doubts that inhere in those. As soon as we think about self and other, there's a feeling of gap, of doubt, of uncertainty, of discomfort, of slight fear, maybe, you know, and you give that up because here it is. This world doesn't stop. We're all going to end this class and we'll go about our business. We're going to have dinner here because we're 2 hours earlier than most of you. and you'll go do, somebody will be doing different things. We have somebody from Florida, you know, somebody from Minneapolis. Each one of us will be doing different things in our lives. And this luminous world arises in this knowledge. Runrick, self-known, always, unstoppably, never quits.
Thank you.
Never ends.
Danielle,
I don't know where I got this idea from, but some books. I have the idea that we're all consciousness, pure consciousness, and that we are just, you know, the universe observing itself, and that's our thing. And so I'm wondering if we are trying to take away layers of, you know, I and other, and see more and more reality, is the purpose to realize that we are actually pure consciousness and that we are just a part of the universe, you know, observing itself. Is that what like enlightenment is? Just understanding what exactly we are. I was, you know, just wondering.
Just wondering.
Just wondering. Is that I mean, the purpose of all the lives, you know, and all that trying to be enlightened, what is the ultimate reason for it? And the only thing I come up with is that the universe is just doing its thing. I don't know. Well, I don't know. It's just having a play with itself. Like, you know, it's just, I'm not understanding why. I don't know.
I think each of us is on a path. We're unwinding our confusion and our suffering, our sorrow, our self-doubt, our self-hatred. And in doing that, the path takes certain shapes, intermediate shapes, you might say. And certainly some of those shapes have to do with seeing more clearly, of being more happy and relaxed, and of loving our world more, of feeling more heart and sympathy for the world around us. And as we begin to, what divides us begins to dissolve. And I think that that's really all that we can say as we tread this path, that these divisions, which have to do with fear and attack, are dissolving, and that the world is emerging vividly and clearly. Yeah, and with heart. And that heart, they call it compassion. It's called noble heart, Ningje in Tibetan. And it informs the way in which we see the trees and our cats and dogs and lovers and friends and children and all of it.
You know, like you said before, like once you realize it, there's nothing else to be done. It's just to do that, just to love and help. And that's, what else would you do? So yeah, I appreciate that answer. Thanks.
Well, if there are no more questions, what do you think, Barry? Should we end this with?
We're getting towards the end here.
Okay. Why don't we just end it? We'll have a discussion tomorrow. I hope. I'm hoping you or Michael can lead it, because I can't. Yeah.
I shall.
Thank you.
I'll be there.
You can?
Barry and I will, yes.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. Yeah, I've got family in town.
Thank you.
So shall we do the closing chants? Shall I put them up for you, Michael?
Probably better if someone else do it. There's a lot of noise here right now.
Okay, I'll do it.
Birds, people.
All right. Let's see. I'm looking for the chants. Here we go. I'm going to mute all. By the blessings of enlightened and compassionate ones, by the power of my positive actions of the 3 times, and my prayers of pure aspiration, may wars, conflicts, epidemics, and all other maladies dissolve in this world, and may the earth and all who live on this earth enjoy the abundance of well-being. May all learn to live lovingly with each other. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great East, may the lotus garden of the Rigden's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Everybody,
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
you're
Yeah.
wonderful.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, John. Thanks, everybody. That was great.
Good to
Sorry
see
for
you. Co-hosting. Take
Thank
care.
you. Wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you so
Night.
much.
Tomorrow. Mhm.
Wow. Good to see you, Robert and Rensu.
Have a good